As Ken said, we're in the book of Numbers, and last week we were here and there and stuff. What I did was put a little quick outline up here. That way, kind of keep us in tone and everything. Now, some of the things we covered already, but I know there'll be other things that y'all will add to it as we go through, because there's 36 chapters here. We understand that they say it's 40-year journey. Okay, a wandering in the wilderness. Okay, and what it was is actually 38, because they counted from the time they left Egypt until they got to Mount Sinai, which they decided to camp out there for a little bit. Because when you look at the book of Numbers, first thing it tell you, the first 10 chapters is preparation. They're preparing, God's preparing them, getting them in order, getting them ready to go. And as he was doing that, he was getting them in order, getting them ready to go. He said, he did what? We had a census. He said, let's count all the men from 20 and above. Okay. He says, count them all, the first census that he did there. And then what he did was also the order that he put them in. And I passed out last week, and I don't know if you got them in this week. I passed this out last week. Okay. And what it says on here is that it gives a chart of how they were set up. Yes. You need another one? He said he wasn't here. He was here in spirit because he was on the West. And if you're on Zoom, just look in the back of your Bible. It should be a layout there. If not, it would be in the book of Numbers. It should be a layout. But it talks about the camp, how he organized it, had them set up a certain way. A certain way, in other words, according to the number of tribes, there's 12 tribes, yes? Okay. And we said the way the camp was set was a type of what? Cross. Okay. And so he did that. And we numbered them as they censored. They said the number was what? Andy, you said you had the numbers last week? About 605,000 or 603,550 fighting men from age 20 and above. And that was broken down. And why did he do that? He did the census because now they're going into what? War. They're going to have to fight for what he's going to give them and fight their way through the desert in order to get there. Okay? They didn't do too much fighting, but we know that in order to get into the promised land, they had to take it away from those that were already occupying. Okay? And so we had the order of the camp, the tribes, they put 12 tribes, to put them in there, and they didn't count the women. They just counted, called as fighting men. And we came up with a total of about 2.5 million to 3 million of those that came out of Egypt. And we also talked about last week, we said there was a second census done. He had them count again in chapter 26? Huh? Yeah, in chapter 26, I think he had the second census. I know I jumped all the way over there. Y'all trying to figure it out, right? I mean, somebody brought it up last week. Okay, in chapter 26. But the difference in numbers that they had was approximately 1,800. In other words, there was a time that they traveled and they wandered, and when they did the second census where they were preparing to go what? Into Canaan. He did another second census because what? Say again? 1,820. Now, did not God say be fruitful and multiply? Yeah. Okay. They came out with 2.5 million people, right? To 3 million. You think if he said be fruitful and multiply, that they would be what? More. But they were what? Decimated. They were what? He told them to do certain things and they didn't do it. So he ordered that. Now, at the same time, I didn't know we'd covered last week here. Did anybody read about the census of the census of the firstborn? I think it's chapter 4, census of the firstborn. And what it did was that's where they counted the Levite tribe. It was for those men 30 years old to 50 years old. They came up with a number for that. And that was interesting. As I was going through there, I saw that the census of the firstborn. Why is that significant? Anybody want to put that up? They were the priests. Okay, they were priests. And those are ones that were never counted in the original census to begin with, because they were never counted in the first census. Because they were there to do what? Take care of the Ark of the Covenant, take care of the temple, take care of everything that's dealing with what the priest's duties. And then at the same time in this chapter here, from 1 to 10, he was giving them what they needed to do and how they needed to do it. Okay. Did anybody else find anything significant in the first 10 chapters? I still got a little bit more to go. Okay. Now, I don't know if y'all took a look at this that I passed out last time. When you looked at this, like I said, they camped out around Mount Sinai for about a year, almost 13 months, receiving their commandments to do what? The commandment on how the guy wanted them broke up as far as the order of the camp, who was going to take care of what as far as the temple was concerned, the temple or the tabernacle, who was responsible for being in the front, the sides, and in the back. Okay. Now, the first 10 chapters very interesting. He did all that. And then they finally get the orders to do what? Yeah, to leave Sinai. And that's when the fun begins. Okay. Chapter 9 and 10, they talk about the forward march. In other words, they to leave Sinai and go to what? Kadesh. Okay. They're going to Kadesh. They get there. Sinai, and then something happens. We talked about it a little bit last week. Something happened. I'll put up there just to give you a cue. A rebellion and judgment came about.
Yeah, when they had the 10 spies.
The 10 spies? No, you're a little bit too far yet. Go here. And complaining, moaning and groaning. Did Moses have some siblings, some brothers and sisters? Who were they? And who else? And what happened? There you go. Remember we talked about it last week? Huh? Say again? Yeah. She brought, there was a little destitute. There was a little thing that we call jealousy, if you ask me. Okay. Came up, and the main one that brought it up against Moses was who? His sister, Miriam. Okay. And it was what? Basically a false allegation was brought up against him. But in the same time as that's happening, okay, that's what happened. What happened to Miriam back then? We talked about it last week in the discussion. She fell with leprosy. And therefore, when she fell with leprosy, it slowed them down. They could not move until the judgment that was passed on her was complete. Okay. The judgment was what? Leprosy, and they had to stay put for what? How long, when you have leprosy, when you're unclean, how long do you stay away from people? I thought 7 days. 7 days. Right. Okay. Anything else? Anybody see anything else while we were going in it there, discussion-wise?
What would leprosy be like in compared to today?
Leprosy compared to today?
COVID or AIDS or what would it be?
I would say if you leprosy, go ahead.
Was it like cracking up the skin or?
No, it was boils, blistering stuff. Think about chicken pox, monkeypox, smallpox, chicken pox, but worse. Okay, go ahead.
There's two types of leprosy. The one that she had was the skin irritation of the skin and stuff, but there's a leprosy where it actually deforms the bones and stuff. Also, it's more serious.
In other words, your hands, your arm, your joints and everything. It's like if somebody had, I get that. Who said that? That's what I said. Like, who said that? Crystal, thank you. Okay, it's like having real bad arthritis and people, you can't straighten them out, and their knuckles and everything is swell up. But see, leprosy back then was very, they considered contagious and everything. Okay, they considered unclean. Now, there's a lot of things that were considered unclean back then, was it not? Okay, and stuff. What were they?
Arrows with hoops.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Hooves,
They couldn't touch their bodies.
their bodies.
Woman that was on a mission.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that one when it comes to when you talk about that, I think about the what's the name of the place? Ache, where they lost about somebody took something they weren't supposed to and they she hit it on. Yeah, that was in Joshua, wasn't it? Okay, that was in Joshua. Think about it.
Weren't they considered as unclean if they were had been around dead people?
Right? Okay, she didn't hear y'all say it, but yeah, that's right. Okay.
After having babies.
Women after having babies. So there was a lot of things that was set up there that did that as far as uncleanness and stuff like that. Now, and also after you did that, you go into chapter 13 and 14 and place a decision. Now, this is where I know y'all saw that in there. The spies. Was it 10 spies? It's 12 tribes. Was 12 tribes, was it not?
Yeah.
Okay. If there's 12 tribes, they sent a spy from each tribe.
No.
They didn't send a tribe from each tribe? Somebody help her out here.
It says, send the men, one from each tribe.
Yeah. It said send a man from one for each tribe, has to be 12. What was that at?
That's verse 2, chapter 13.
Chapter 13, verse 2.
Men for yourself to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am going to give to the sons of Israel. They'll send a man from each of their father's tribes, everyone a leader among them. But it doesn't say anything about from the tribe of Levi. See, Levi was not, you know what I'm saying? You can assume if you want,
Or they sent one for the word said send 12, did it? It said one from each tribe.
it says one from each tribe.
Now, think about, go ahead. No, go finish it. Go ahead.
It doesn't say 12.
Okay. Now, does it say 12? Okay, so when they sent the spies out, okay, they went at we'll get to that in a minute. Where did they go? When in land of Canaan. What did they find?
How strong the men were. How strong the men were.
Okay. Now remember they called it what? The land of milk and honey, guys described it for them. What else did they find out there?
Big bushels of grapes.
What'd you say? What you say, Eric?
That's what I would have been so excited about.
What's that?
Brought me some grapes back.
Good wine.
That's about 4 or 5 men carry cluster.
That's the size of them. That mean you talking about that, huh?
Well, it was
Well, we'll get that in a minute. You hold that. I said we'll get back to that in a second. Everybody went. We went 12. We talking about what they found there. Yeah, we went 12. Okay. Since y'all found it, what verse was it in?
Start naming them all.
in verse 5.
What chapter? 13?
13.
Okay.
4.
Did he name the tribes they came from?
Yes.
Tell me who they came from.
Tribe of Reuben.
Reuben. Before, go ahead.
Judah. Issachar. Ephraim. Benjamin. Zebulun. Joseph.
Caddy.
Namely, Manasseh. Manasseh. Dan. Asher.
Mm-hmm.
Naphtali. Gad.
That brings up an interesting thing, does it not, Eric? You're right. They did not say the tribe of Levi. But if you look at your map, if you look at the breakdown on your around the camp, they got 12 tribes that are not counting Levi. Okay, why? Can you tell me why?
Why they have 12 tribes?
No, yeah. Why they had 12 tribes, but they're not counting Levi in there. But what did they actually 13 tribes?
The tribe of Levi's sole purpose was to tend to the needs of take care of the tabernacle and tend to the needs of the people. So the soldiers and all that would come out of the other tribes for protection.
Okay, we have to go back a little bit. Joseph had some children, did he not? Mm-hmm. And when his father blessed them children, he blessed 2 of them, right? So he split a tribe, did he not? There you go, Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay. There's where you got the 12 came from that. Levi was never counted in the total number of everything. So Levi was a tribe that was to be the one and only tribe set aside to take care of what? The temple, the tabernacle, all the things that had to be done. Okay. So the 12 went out. Okay. They found this wonderful place, the promised land, right? Milk and honey, grapes, good grapes. Everything was good, except for one thing. Grasshoppers, right? Grasshoppers. So what happens? Think about this now. They had to make a decision, did they not? They came back, did they not? And they gave a report. What did the report say? How many said?
10 of them.
10 of them said what?
They couldn't do it, or they were too big complaining about the physical and not focusing on what God is going to do for them.
Oh, ouch. Yeah. Where's that come? What's that mean? There was those, but there was 2 that did what? Reported, let's go ahead. In other words, remember in the last 2 Sundays, everybody, Kenneth talked about it, Omar talked about it. There was 2 that trusted who? God. There was 10 that did not trust God. Okay? Didn't have faith enough to go forward, and God was going to provide them and carry them through. Now think about this. If he calls you to walk across dry land in the water, if he provides, helps guide you along, okay, provides for you and cares for you, and then you go back further. After 400 and some years, he brings you out of Egypt with the richest of all riches, right? Why not trust him?
Hey, BJ.
Supposed to spy out the land that I'm going to give you.
Say again?
Also, he told him to spy out the land that he was going to give you.
The key, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you. Okay, go ahead. Who's that? Go, Amari, where? Oh.
Go ahead, Omar.
Go ahead, Amari.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can't hear him. What did he say?
You hear me?
Barely.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can barely hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll wait till I have a better connection. I'll wait.
Go ahead, I'll relay it.
Okay, you can hear me. So Alita made a good point, because we can focus on the physical things, but the bottom line was there was a group that trusted God and we're going to follow God's what God said. When the spies went out, you ain't gonna be able to translate all this, Justin, but it's all right. When the spies went out, they found that the land was just the way God promised their fathers it would be. The main point, Justin, I want you to tell them is, if they go to that text and people are talking about grasshoppers, what the text said was the men in the land looked like giants to the spies. But then they also said that we look like grasshoppers in their sight. If they can find the text, Justin, my point is, disobedience to God affects not only how we view other people, but it affects how we view ourselves. I don't know if you heard all that, but I'll try to make it clear once I get the better perception. I'm headed that way anyway.
It's in 1333.
1333?
Read 1333.
Who has it?
Yeah, we saw the people We saw there are great size. We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them.
Now, my question, Andy, is when did the people have a conversation with them to ask them how they viewed them? They knew how they viewed themselves, but did they go and ask the giants how the spies looked to them? No, they assumed because of a lack of faith, that a lack of faith skewed the way they viewed themselves in the eyes of other people. That was my point. Because they didn't ask them, hey, yeah, y'all look like giants, but how do we look to y'all? They didn't ask.
Good point there. Good point. Go ahead.
We'll see over, and I think it's, I want to say Samuel. It's further on in the book where they, and we'll get there, but they wanted a king like the rest of the nations.
Right. That's in. Yeah. First.
But as you see here, they didn't have a king. God was their king.
Mm-hmm.
And so if God was their king, he's a God of war. And he would never send them in the battle to actually fight. Yeah, he fought their wars for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like he did with Pharaoh. Okay. So, and of course, this is before then. But God actually fought for them. And you'll find out when they get a king, God will tell them, your king will send you to war. Right, but here, God had already said the land that I'm going to give you. So how are they going to conquer the people?
You don't
God
have
already
to.
got that taken care of. He just told me to go spy it out.
Mm.
You know, and check it out.
Mm-hmm. And see, and that's a good point there, is that the point is that just that one phrase that I'm going to give you. Yeah. If somebody said, I'm going to give you something, are you going to argue with them, or are you going to take them at their word and go for it? Well, with God, you take him at his word. Some people you look at and say, last time you gave me something, I didn't like it, but okay, but you take him at his word. And so if he numbered them, had them numbered in case he had to do war.
And he would.
Right?
He'd be with them.
Right. And we see that all through, especially Jericho. Okay. We see it where he's with them. We also see it where he's, who were they? I can't remember where they're fighting at. Moses up there holding his arms up, and they had to help hold his arms. I can't, my mind just slipped on that one. Okay. But they're there. Okay. No. There wasn't no fighting in Sodom and Gomorrah. God was, he took care of them. Okay. But that's it. God was the king. And so, as you said, they were commissioned, sent 12 out, 10 came back with, 12 went out, 12 came back, 10 was saying, no, 2 was saying yes. That brought about what comes up next is what? God moves forward. The people backwards. I know it's weird to say. What do you mean by that? God moved forward. God knew what he was going to do. The people in them doing what for the next 30-some years? Wandering and dying in the desert. And what? Because of what? Unbelief. Because of complaining, murmuring, and everything else as they went across. And so the like I said, the majority report was giants versus grasshoppers, if you look at it. Minority report, we rely on God. Okay. So go ahead.
Because at that time, when they didn't want to go, that was, I think it was the 10th. They had not listened and rejected and not trusted God. And at that point, they wanted to go back, so he sent them back, but they still wandered in the desert.
Yeah, they. I can't remember. I don't even. You brought up a good point. How many times did they complain? How many times did they murmur? How many times did they question? Actually, if you ask me, question God.
They started complaining before they got to Mount Sinai. They started complaining
before they went across. Yeah, they started complaining before they even crossed the region. Okay.
They said we had it better back in Egypt.
Well, some of them were already complaining because they left. When they just started, like you said, walking away from Egypt itself, had to lose their homes, stuff like that. Some didn't even want to put the blood on the doorpost, right? Did they? But some people said, hey, I live in this house too, so we take care of that right now. Okay, so they took care of that. So they, verse, chapter 15, as you were seeing there, brings us up there, and they moving them forward. They get to Rwanda for the next 38 years, but a lot of things happen between 15 and 22. That is where the complaints come about. That's where the accounting comes about. Remember what I told you last time when we were discussing this, is that when he did say number them, when he put his army together, they had to be purebloods. You understand what I'm saying? Pure blood. They had to be Egypt. Not Egypt, but Egyptians. No mixing in there. It had to be straight Egyptian. Egypt. Israeli. I can't get it right. I'll get it right. Y'all keep me on. Y'all, that's why this discussion, y'all supposed to help me out. Okay, go ahead.
It was in Exodus 17, 9,
Go ahead.
where he was in Ararat,
Okay.
where it says, tomorrow I will stand on top of the hills with
Okay.
the rod of God in my hand. And so Joseph did as Moses said to him, and found with Amalek. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Amalek,
Huh?
Amalek.
Is it Exodus what?
Exodus 17. Where they had rocks and stuff to hold his arms up.
Exodus 17. Amalek's fault. Amalek. Okay, Amalek. Now, that's the battle they were having.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, 1712. It was supporting that. Thank you for looking that up and finding it. But that again, that was him. God still was involved in that. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, you got something, man? Okay.
Yeah, I found it was 10 times as
Go ahead.
Numbers 14:22. Because all these men who have seen my glory and the signs which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have put me to the test, now these 10 times, and have not heeded my voice, they certainly shall not see the land of which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who reject me see it.
That was Numbers 14?
That was 14:22.
That was number 1422 is what she just read. And it was dealing with how many times they had complained up to that part. How many times they had disobeyed God is what you're saying, right? What it says? How many times they had disobeyed God in their disobedience, which is, God is long suffering, is he not? God is patient, is he not? Okay. But he will take care of his people one way or the other. Okay. So
It's interesting
go ahead.
that it says that they 10 times, 10 men that came back not believing.
Go ahead.
It's just, when you think one thing has nothing to do with the other.
Okay.
And it's unrelated. When indeed God is in control of everything.
Providence of God. Sovereign God.
Yes.
And control everything. Yeah. It's just like how long, here's a quick one for you. How long were the spies gone? Hear say again? I didn't hear you. 40 days. 40 days. We start messing with numbers now. 40 days.
40 years.
Okay.
Jesus fasted 40 days.
Mm-hmm.
Moses fasted 40 days.
Well, Moses did triple 40s. Okay, raised up in Egypt for 40 years. Exiled himself for 40 years. Well, exiled himself, but God kept him out there 40 years. Then he brought him back to be in the desert for 40 years. He wandered for 40 years because people disobedient. But also, at the same, that's, Moses also got a little angry with the people himself. Yeah. So that's a good point that you brought up there, Cherie. As you start looking at numbers and stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
In 14:10, when Moses and Aaron was trying to talk the people into having belief and they wouldn't, they talked about, picking a leader and stoning Moses and Aaron. And then that's when God's glory appeared at the tent in front of all the Israelites.
In other words, that was part of the people's rebel, right? The people were rebelling then, right?
Right.
So God made a sign saying, you don't want to come up against my man. That's the glory itself. Is that we talking verse 10, right, son?
Right. Yes.
It says there in verse 10, it says this right here. But all the congregation said to stone them with stone. Then the glory of the Lord appeared in the tent of the meeting to all the sons of Israel. So what do you think happened when they did that? To all the sons of Israel. The glory appeared in the tent.
They saw that big bright light coming from that tent. Wasn't nobody supposed to be in there? Wasn't nobody in there? Well, they stopped what they was doing.
Look at verse.
Tracks.
Okay, look at verse 11. They stopped whatever they're doing, right in tracks, right? Look at verse 11. The Lord said to Moses, how long will these people spurn me? And how long will they then will not believe in me, despite all the signs which I had performed in their midst? That leads you to how many times? There was 10 times, right? Down in verse 22, was it, Alita? Yeah. And continue on, he's saying, look at, says, look at 12. I will smite them with pestilence and what? Dispossess them, and I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than them. And what is he doing? Is he putting upon them a discipline or chasing them? He's telling what he's going to do to them, right? Because of what? Their unbelief. Because not their only unbelief, but their rebellion against the man that he has put in charge. Mm-hmm. The man he put in place. Yes.
Also, if they're rebelling against him, then they're rebelling against God.
He's his representative, right? Okay. So they're going to smite him. Now, again, this is what he's bringing us about, telling them this right here now. And we already know that they have a problem with, they already made a decision they're not going to believe, because I think in 13 they decided they're not going to believe the spies, right? But look at verse, where was I at? 13. But Moses said to the Lord, now think about this. Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear of it, for by your strength you brought up this people from their midst. What is Moses doing?
He's trying to
Reasoning with God.
reason with God. No, it's more of a, he's trying to help the people of Israel.
He's doing something nobody else would do.
What's that? Talk to God?
The way he did. God changed his, well, not changed his.
Oh, you almost stepped into that one.
God knew it was coming.
Huh?
God knew it was coming.
Okay.
But
He didn't change his mind, but he did what?
but he listened to Moses.
Somebody read verse 14.
And they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, Lord, are among these people, that you, Lord, are seen face to face, and your cloud stands above them, and you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day, and a pillar of fire by night.
Keep going.
Now, if you kill these people as one man, then the nation which have heard of your fame will speak, saying, because the Lord was not able to bring this people to the land which he swore to give them. Therefore, he killed them in the wilderness.
And then in verse 17 it said, but now I pray, let the power of the Lord be great, just as you have declared. In other words, the Lord, it says right there, he slowed his anger. Okay, it said 18, the Lord is slow to anger, abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquities and transgressions, but he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquities on the fathers, on the children to the third and fourth generation. How many times did we hear about that in the New Testament, where he said from generation to generation? Matter of fact, at the cross, or at the trial, okay, of Jesus. When he was sitting there, when Pontius Pilate had both the thief and him out there, and they decided that, let the thief go. And what did they say to him? What did they say to Pontius Pilate?
I think forgive them for they know not.
They said crucify him, but what did they say? Let it be on our what? Children's generation. That's what I was trying to get at. They're quick to what? They're quick to throw their children and grandchildren in there, right? Okay. Right? But God already said it's going to be on your generation, after generation, after generation. Okay. So he kind of he let it go, but they will continue to wander. Anything else y'all saw up in there? And so what did the Lord do? He pardons, right? He pardons them, as it says, right? He pardons them and rebukes them. And that's where he rebuked them when they come up with the 10 times they have questioned me. Okay.
Hey, BJ.
Yes, Amara.
I've been speaking about that leadership again. You see how swift God was to deal with not only just their general disobedience, but when it had to do with the people he set in place to rule over them, like Moses or Aaron. And when we were talking about that, I thought about the people didn't realize how much of a blessing Moses and their leaders were to them, because they were moved by God and they were placed there by God. And BJ, that kind of made my mind go to Hebrews when he tells the congregation now, obey those who rule over you, because it will be profitable for you. And it won't be. And I'm paraphrasing, but he talks about how it's not burdensome to the leaders, because you saw how much of a burden it was for Moses and how much of a burden it was for Abraham. To the point, Eric even made a good point. God's leaders have such a burden for his people that they'll go to the point of negotiating to God on their behalf. I think about BJ when God was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and
Lot.
Abraham negotiated with God. If I can find 100 righteous, if I can find 50 righteous, if I can find 25 righteous. And my point is, God puts godly leaders over his people for his glory and for the people's profit. And it would do good for us to obey those who rule over us.
Thank you. Now, just camping out here, this chapter here, it tells you a lot what's going on with the people, and that it carries and why they end up wandering and continue to move forward. Look down there later on. Look down there at well, let's see what we got here. Okay, look at verse 34. I asked you a question, y'all answered it already. It's still in chapter 14. It said, according to the number of days which you have spied out the land, 40 days. We answered that. For every day you shall bear your guilt a year, even 40 years, and you will know my oppression. In other words, he's saying for every day that you spent out there spying, I'm making you pay a year for. That you're going to wander here because you did not trust me. You did not come about and gather that for me. Okay. Look at verse 36. Isaiah, can you read 36 for me? All the way down to 38. That's in chapter 14.
Yeah. As for the man whom Moses sent to spy out the land, and who returned and made all the congregation grumble against him by bringing out a bad report concerning the land, even those men who brought out the very bad report of the land died by a plague before the Lord. But Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of
Jephunneh,
remained alive out of those men who went to spy out the land. 39?
30. Yeah, I want you to 39 and just stop there because I want to see if y'all got any comments on that. Go ahead.
When Moses spoke these words to all the sons of Israel, the people mourned greatly.
They mourn greatly. Are they mourning because of what he said? Because they're sad? Because they know that some of them that at 20 years and above is not going to make it in there?
No, he said bitterly.
You got NIV says bitterly. They were really hurt, right? They were like, oh. In other words, they knew they weren't, they had received their sentence. Okay. And stuff. So they received it. But look what Moses says for them. And that's when you talk about verse 40. It says, in the morning, however, they rose up early and went out to the ridge of the hill country, saying, here we are. We have indeed sinned, but we will go up to the place which the Lord has promised. But says verse 8, but Moses said, why then are you transgressing that the commandment of the Lord will not succeed? Okay. And so God had already said what they're going to do. Okay. But they want to go up there and what? Repent. They want to say, oh, they'll forgive us.
Punishment was already
The punishment was already there. Okay. Punishment was done. Okay. And so look what happened to him in verse 43. Go ahead and do that. Verse 42, it says right here, do not go up or you will be struck down before your enemies, for the Lord is not among you. Remember when Kenneth just said what? God was going to deliver it to him? But now God said, I'm not going to be among you. Okay, you're fighting this on your own. These people are going to come down and attack you because see what happens to them there? Look what happens down there. It says, for the Amalekites, and in verse 43, for the Amalekites, and the Canaanites, and the Amalekites and the Canaanites will be there in the front of you, and you will fall by the sword, inasmuch as you have turned back from following the Lord, and the Lord will not be with you. In other words, they would be overrun. There's a lot of things that chapter 14 was full of God handing out his judgment, God handing out this, but also showing what the people were doing, how to come about. Yes, Ken.
So I was just looking for this verse here.
Which one?
In Romans 9, we're talking about Israel. And as we discussed, we've got to remember, there was no Israelites. Everybody would be considered Gentile.
Right.
Okay, so he took a people and from among the Gentile nations and said, okay, from this land, these people are going to be Israel.
Right.
Okay, so they was not naturally born Israel. Okay. And setting this group of people to the side and tag the name of them, everybody else became Gentiles and they became the Jews. In Romans 9, we're talking about the rebellious here, okay? Why are these people dying? Then he said that they all would go into the promised land, or that they all would be saved. Now in
Romans 9?
Romans 11 first. I want to look at this in Romans 11. Romans 11, 25.
Gotcha.
And 26. Verse 25. I do not want you, brethren, to be uninformed of this mystery, so that you will not be wise in your own estimation, that a partial hardening has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come. Okay? And verse 26 says, and so all Israel will be saved.
Just as
okay? So if all of Israel will be saved, then what's going on with all this back and forth? And hey, all of them died, there was over 20.
Right.
All of them didn't get to go to the promised land. And so we look at all this, and we're talking about now. Let's go to Romans 9. From here.
Oh, I know which one you're doing.
So we start at 6. But it is not as though the word of God had failed, but they are not all Israel who are descendants of Abraham of Israel. Got it? So they might be a descendant in Israel, but then he says here, they're not all descendants of Israel who are of Israel. Okay, so when we're talking about God's people, in the global sense as God look at it, he's talking about those who believe.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So even though nationally these are his people, nationally as a nation, every person in there is not his people.
Good. I got it.
So the all is the one that believe and trust.
Right. So all those who was killed off, when it says all of Israel will be saved, it doesn't include those. It's all believing Israel will be saved.
Mm-hmm.
Got it? So when we read 11 over here, where it says, so all Israel will be saved, it's only the believing, the true Israel will be saved. I'm going to read back over here in verse 7. Nor are they all children because they are Abraham's descendants. Okay, but through Isaac your descendants will be named. Okay, verse 8, that is, it is not the children of the flesh who are children of God, but the children of the promise are regarded as descendants. Got it? So,
The promise were those that believed, and there was like you said, you pulled them out. He put these people here. We already know Abraham was a Gentile to begin before he became the nation of Israel.
Yeah.
Nation, okay, gonna be followed by many nations. Many nations.
Right.
Okay. So you had this envelope here. I'm taking these and putting you over here. You are my people. Why did he pick them? Because God wanted to pick them. Okay.
Yeah, they were not because they were more or less in number.
No, he set them aside. Now, when you made a statement 9:7, 9:6, it's not all Israel is Israel.
I'll read it again. Okay, verse 6. But it is not as though the word of God has failed. But people say, wait a minute, God's word failed because some Israelites didn't make it.
No, they did make it. Go ahead.
The one that tasted.
Mm-hmm.
But they are not all Israel who are descendants of Israel.
Mm.
Got it?
Mm-hmm.
So they were descendants from the physical side of Israel, but they weren't true Israel from the spiritual side. That's what he's saying.
They weren't God's chosen.
They weren't God's chosen Israelite people, even though they was a chosen
Nation.
The whole nation was considered chosen, but everybody in the nation wasn't Israel. Right.
So therefore,
we had a rebellion going on because there was unbelief. So they weren't really God's people as individuals. They just have to be in the nation that God chose as a nation.
now also entangled in that was the mixed multitude that was also tagging along with them. Okay, yeah. Which as you said, they brought Egypt with them continuously. Okay, and they were going into lands that were going to be surrounded by people that were not them. Okay.
I just want to point that out because we're talking about the rebellions, and it's not that all these people were true Israel, even though they were of the nation.
Okay. A good point there. Any questions on that, or anybody got any additional comments on that? Okay, but go back. But as we saw to me in chapter 14, it's one of those pivotal points where everything just came together there, and they started getting them into the point where you're going to wander this point here. You're going to go out here. I'm going to continue with my plan. It's just that you're going to take you a while to get to my plan. You're going to circle this. You're not going to visit this Kadesh one time. You're going to visit twice, okay? Because they circled around it. And so for every day that they'll spend out spying, I'm going to make you walk a year for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, because God's promise, when he promises something, it doesn't matter how many died out in the desert. His promise is still going to be fulfilled.
Right. Be fulfilled. And see, that's why when I first started out, when we talked about the numbers, was on a difference of only 1,802. You say 1,820, 1820, but yet they came up 2.5 million, 3 million people. And if they hadn't did what they're doing, what would the size have been? We speculate, would the promised land be able to what? Sustain that 3 million or 6 million or whatever? Yes, of course it would. Okay.
It's you bring that point because these people be talking all this global warming stuff and how we gonna run out of
food and all this, and they don't understand that God put everything in this earth to sustain everyone in it for as long as He is culminating His plan.
Mm.
You don't have to worry about running out of anything in this earth because you know who created it.
Mm-hmm. And so, just finish up here. But look, as you look at this right here, you see how they did the wandering. They stayed here 13 months here at the first stop. Okay, Mount Sinai, which I don't see it on this one. I got it on another one that's better than this. Okay, there it is down the bottom. I didn't see it. They stayed there. Then they went out and they sent the spies out to go look at the land. Spies came back, and then they started doing a little circle. They started doing a little wandering. And as we've all known, and as kind of as taught and it's fun, that their shoes never wore out, their clothes never wore out. Okay, no matter how much complaining they did about food, they had the manna. They had enough quail. They said enough quail coming out of their nose as they kept eating. They finally they were tired of that. Okay, and so but they had manna, the quail. They were taking care of while He does what? While His judgment is taking care of that which He's doing right here, preparing them again to go into the promised land. He wants the second generation to come up to inherit that what He promised to the other generation already. But they were not able to take care of it because they were unbelief, not trusting in God. Okay, so I know we spent a little bit there. So next time I want you, if you haven't read about our favorite person, one of the prophets in there, Baal. Okay. You're also going to run into, I just hit it up, you find the talking donkey. I was going to say something else, okay? But you find the talking donkey in there, okay? In that chapter 22, 23, and 25, because it's interesting in that part there. And
Donkey wasn't the problem. Him talking to the donkey was the problem.
The donkey has some sense there. It says something's in the road. I'm not going that way. Okay. We can end up getting his foot crushed and everything. Oh, I'm throwing it away. I know y'all already read about him already and everything in Numbers. But it's amazing as you go through this, as you correlate this, and I'm glad you brought the point up about in Romans and stuff like that. But again, we relate this to what's happening in the New Testament when we start looking at, man, they did this. But what do we do? What are believers doing nowadays? They're wandering. There's some believers that are wandering right now. Okay? Some, okay, are still out there. Okay? So